Hi, and welcome to another episode of the Innovation Conversation. Today we are joined by Siara. Annie, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me, Ricardo.
It's a pleasure having you here. Annie, would you like to introduce yourself to the audience, please?
Yes, so I am the CEO and founder of ONEWAYX. And what we do in a nutshell is we are an immersive commerce platform for brands and retailers.
And how do you get started in all this? Because it's quite complex what you do. I've had a look at the website, so it's very interesting what you do. How do you get started with it?
Fantastic. So let me just explain a little bit more what immersive commerce are. So we all know what websites look like. It's 2D interface, and the website consumer experience has changed very little over the last 20 years. So what we do is we really bridge the offline in-store retail experience into a digital world, into the immersive retail commerce, if that makes sense. How I got started is my career started in the casino or integrated resort industry. And I used to work for a company that sells software and hardware into casinos. Especially, I was looking after the new business development sector, which means that in my lifetime, I have had the opportunity in the opening project of some of the greatest casinos in the world, such as Venetian and Wynn. And as like an entrepreneur, I will always have a side hustle. So in my side hustle those days was bringing ideas to the casinos in driving foot traffic to their property, doing more promotions and events. So I don't know if you remember Pokemon Go?
Yes.
So one of the ideas we brought to the casino is if you want to increase foot traffic into your retail stores, why don't we create like a Pokemon Go-like app in WeChat, because at that time I was in Macau, and Macau predominantly attracts overseas travelers from mainland China. So the app they use is WeChat. And so I'm very entwined with what is going on with the consumers, what the consumer behavior is, and I do a lot of like deep research. And when I had a look at retail and the shopping experience per se, and where the consumers are heading, and that those are Generation Z, Gen Alpha, the younger generation, the way they consume information is a lot different to how we consumed information 20 years ago. And what that looks like are a lot of social media, but also very immersive social media, so such as like live streaming. But a lot of the younger generation are also on gaming engines like gaming platforms like Roblox, for example, right? And that's how they interact with brands. That's how they interact with their friends. So how ONEWAYX really come about is, well, if we have a look at where the consumers are going or who the future of consumers are and how they consume information, how does the brand interact with them, and have a look at what we have now. And we are still utilizing 2D interfaces, that's going to have to change as soon as possible. Otherwise, those brands that are still operating on 2D websites are going to lose the interaction with the younger generation of customers, if that makes sense.
Does how did you come up with this idea? Obviously, you found a niche in the market. You kind of found that there was a gap for it, but it must have been scary moving from a nice, steady job to being an entrepreneur. So how was that journey like?
Yeah, it's interesting because any entrepreneur did speak to customers, but I started with the end consumer in mind. What do the end consumers want? Because essentially our company, we interact with the brand and retailers, and we have to help them succeed, which is attracting their customers. So I stood in front of Harrods for a couple of days, and any cool, trendy young shoppers that came out, I just go, can I borrow 5 minutes of your time? How was your shopping experience? Who do you love to shop the most and why? If you can dream of the ideal world of a shopping experience for you, whether it's online and offline, what does that look like? And it's really gathering the consumer insight that gave me the idea to start ONEWAYX.
That must have been a fun experience, I would imagine, because then you kind of
Super fun. And I think as a startup, you always have to kind of go back to the base camp, right? You always have to then go back to speaking to the end consumers. What value can we add to them? And then pitch back to, predominantly our clients and go, hey, these are the customers. These are what the customers want. And we see a gap in your business, so and so. And then, put it into our product development pipeline, I guess.
It's a big lesson when it comes to product market fit, because I don't think that many entrepreneurs are willing to actually go and sit for 4 days in front of Harrods and ask people a bunch of questions, right? They're probably too shy, or just think, no, this is going to work. We don't need to do any research or anything like that. So yeah, it speaks volumes. And how are you finding the market itself? Are people very receptive? Are companies willing to take the risk and actually adopt this new technology?
Yeah, really great. What we are seeing is more and more of predominantly the luxury and the mid-luxury brands are adopting to this experience because it is critically important for that market to storytell. We are all consumed with so much information, so much brand, so much products out. So that brand storytelling, that connecting, the emotive connecting with the consumers are critical. And as we all know, customer acquisition cost, especially advertising on social media, is getting more and more expensive. So actually retention and building customer loyalty is going to be far more cheaper and far more affordable for brands and retailers to invest into that than keep pumping in money on advertising on Meta and TikTok per se.
Which obviously absorb a lot of the cost, and that's actually what you don't want to do, right? Because then you end up like the cost per acquisition and lifetime value of the customer just goes down the drain, which is exactly the opposite of what you want to do. And how are you finding like the investors and stuff like that? Are they very receptive? Are you struggling to fundraise? How is that journey like?
No startup journey is going to be as smooth as you want to be. There are a lot of hurdles, there are a lot of roller coasters. So I wouldn't say both our product market fit, trying to find product market fit, or investment journey has been smooth sailing. But one thing, as you know, as you speak to a lot of entrepreneurs and founders, persistent and consistency is definitely in our DNA, and we just have to keep knocking on those doors. And I think also finding investors is one thing, but finding the right investors is another thing. So we have been quite lucky in finding some strategic investors that are on our cap table. Not only do they bring their expertise, being a founder themselves who have exited their business, but also understand the industry. So I guess to answer that question, has it been easy? No, it hasn't been easy, but it's also about continuing those conversations. And what I find is that if we continue to update those investors that we have spoken 12 months ago, we might have been too early then, or we haven't found our product market fit, or whatever, we didn't have enough traction. It doesn't really mean that no cannot turn into a yes. So continue those conversations, keeping the investors updated. I mean, they are seeing so many portfolio companies. So just being in their presence, keeping them updated on our progress can lead to future conversations.
Now, you mentioned on something which I always quite like, which is grit and the ability to keep on, pushing forward even though when things don't look up. What do you say to yourself on those moments when things are not looking up and you still need to push ahead? So what do you say? What drives you?
What drives me is I think I have a very clear vision of where I want to go in life. And that is, and bluntly say, I want to create generational wealth. I think I've heard one of your podcasts, we talk about being immigrants. So I'm Hong Kong born, raised in Australia, and had hard-working parents in Australia as immigrants. And we see that, them working 2 or 3 jobs, it is not easy to raising a family. And I think that drives me to become successful one day.
Quite transparent about it as well. Some people just say, "Oh, I just want to change the world," but at least you say, "You know what? I just want to make some money out of this," which is, to be honest, it's gold for any investor listening in, right? Because okay, you know what? Her focus is on the right place, which actually let's create a company that makes a lot of money and everyone's happy in the process. Yeah.
Yeah,
And
I
what
think it's one step at a time. You do want to change the world, but without any money, you can't change the world. So maybe, once the founders that have exited, I mean, I speak to a lot of exit founders and they are so great in giving me their time, their advice, their, strategic thinking. So I know it kind of always comes back around. And I know that one day I'll be doing that as well. So not changing the world yet, exactly.
are you just fundraising in UK, or you've done some fundraising internationally as well?
Yeah, so we are currently fundraising. We are currently fundraising our pre seed round on a safe note. And we are speaking to both retail investors here in the UK as well as overseas. Predominantly, our customer database or our clients that we speak to are across Asia and as well as the US. So it makes sense for us to have investors there because that can also open different opportunities and network for us in those regions.
I was just about to ask, are you finding major differences between the UK market and all the others, or pretty much the same type of mindset and questions? How does it look
Yeah,
like?
that's an interesting question because I went back home a couple of months ago to Australia and found myself in like startup events and just asked VCs, how is the fundraising landscape looking over there? And it seems like every country is different. I guess it's, different market, different personality. What I have consumed is that the US investors are a lot more, what is that word? A lot more gutsy, I would say. UK investors are a lot more conservative and Australian investors are a lot more conservative. So it really, yeah, different market have different outlook on things when it comes to their investment.
Interesting. Now we kind of touch upon your motivations, but when you're having a horrible day, what do you say to yourself? The worst day like you ever had in business, what did you say to yourself to keep on pushing forward?
Yeah. I generally take a step back. I think there was a quote from Barbara Corr, the real estate agent who is in Shark Tank. And she said, if you're having a shit day, just close your laptop, go out, have some fun, clear your brain, come back the next day and start again. And I found that quite interesting. I was like, yeah, that's actually a really good idea. So if I'm having a really crap day, I will just go out, get some fresh air, go for a walk, clear my head, take a notepad and just restart again. I mean, tomorrow is always a new day. And it's, the startup journey is very much like that, right? Monday, you're having the most fantastic, successful day. Tuesday, everything is going wrong from your product to your client's project to investment to anything. And it's just keep showing up every day.
I was just explaining to someone the other day what it feels like to be in a startup. And the way I put it was, I deal with more chaos in the week than most people deal with in a single year. And they will call that a bad year. I call that a normal week.
Yeah.
So I think it's a bit like that. You keep on struggling. You never know, "Ooh, am I going to be completely out of money this week?" No, no, okay. Tomorrow's the next day. I have something. And it's absolutely crazy. It's also a lot of fun, but
But
I don't think
that's the fun part, right? About being your own boss rather than working for someone else. That's the fun part of it.
it is, but it's also the challenge, isn't it? Because you never know how things are going to go. But you also know that depends on how much energy you put into things, and you know you're gonna always find a way. That's like every time I have a problem, I'm thinking I can fix this. I'm a problem solver, and having that mindset and that attitude makes a world of difference. Because even if I'm not able to fix it straight away, eventually I will. So happy thoughts, happy actions and all that, then it kind of works.
Exactly. And you always have to explore different avenues. Like there is never a dead end, I would say. Even if you think, okay, we've explored that avenue, I think as entrepreneurs as well, like we think very creatively. Is there anything else we can do? Is there anyone else we can speak to? And you just never know. Doors will always open if you just keep knocking on them.
Exactly. It's called pivot, right? That's how you
Yeah.
pivot.
Yeah,
One thing doesn't
exactly.
work, you pivot to the other one, and eventually something will work out. What do you wish you knew when you're if you could look back at the Annie from I don't know 5 years ago, what would you tell her?
Yeah. This funny thing is, this is my second startup. My first startup was a event and promotion company. So we did contracted event and promotions for casinos because that was my kind of industry that I fell into. Looking back at that time, I was still in my early years and just kind of went in blind. And looking back at that time, I said, I am never going to do this again. I think I aged about 10 years. I went from 24 to 34. And I said, if I ever going to do this again, it has to be in a big enough market. It has to make money when I am asleep. And it has to solve a really critical problem. And so I took all of those learnings from that business into ONEWAYX, as well as all of the experiences that I have learned along the ways working with corporate companies, working with family business companies into this. So the idea came to me, but I didn't start this lightly for ONEWAYX. I knew how hard and how much it was going to take to do this. And with those three that I have just mentioned, if one of them didn't align, I would never start ONEWAYX. And also, and again, that persistency is key to driving the business forward.
And why the UK? Because from your story, you were born in Australia, then you were also working in Macau, then some, Wynn Casino and the Venetian they're both in Las Vegas, but they could have something in Macau. I'm not sure about this one, but it seems like you travel all over the world. So why did you manage to settle, or how did you make the decision to settle in the UK, and why?
UK is my home now and has been my home for the last 8 years. And when I first came into the UK, I left the casino industry and didn't really know what to do with myself. And I joined a property technology startup that was very successful and was acquired. And that's where I really got my tech innovation buzz. And I'm still friends. I had lunch yesterday with one of my ex-colleagues from that company. We are still very close. We are still close friends from that. And just thought, the opportunity that UK gives to entrepreneurs and founders, especially with the SEIS and EIS, Innovate UK, yourself that are in the startup scene, and there are many other.
Thank you. That speaks very highly.
Well, you support
Yeah, well, I'm not. I don't think I'm a national treasure just yet, but who knows?
Well, I'm naming you the national treasure.
Thank you. That's very kind of you.
You have my badge.
I might get a knighthood sometime soon. Yes, thank you so much.
So yeah, I mean, I don't feel like I would start a company elsewhere because I've made this my home.
And what would you change if you could change anything? What would that be?
If I can change a lot.
You can, because you're an entrepreneur.
Have
And
1,000
part of your mission.
clients sign up. No. How do you mean change in what sense?
I mean, in your journey, what were because we all, kind of struggle with a couple of things, right? What was the one thing that really pissed you off and you kept on thinking, I need to change this because I wish it could be better, something.
Yeah, I think on top of mind that there have been 2 lessons that I've learned over the last 12 months in my journey. And one of them was spending too much focus and too much time on the product and tech at the early days and not enough time on clients. So we had to pivot that very quickly. That's one thing I've learned. The second thing I've learned has been not speaking up sometimes. And it's strange because I want my team to bring in their ideas and to bring in, their thoughts and their plans on the table. But there was a couple of times in my gut, I just thought this is going to steer away from the vision, but I'm just going to let them do that. And it was incorrect. And so that I've learned that you have to be very stubborn on your vision and not the path, not how you get to that, right? So you still have to give your team the freedom to explore and to make mistakes on their end, but it has to stick to number one, company's goal and company's vision.
Now, you actually touch upon a very interesting subject here, which is leadership, and especially leadership in a very small company, because it's key to be able to lead people on the right path. Did you always have that? Did you kind of learn as you went along? Tell me a bit more about like the challenges of being a leader within the startup.
Yeah. So in my previous experiences, I've had the opportunity to lead a team. So I've learned a lot within that. But, being your own startup, being your own boss, it's a lot different than working for another company. And I think it's one of those things you think this is how you're supposed to lead or become that leader, but you also learn along the ways, like what I've said, what I would change, or what I have learned over the last 12 months is these, because I know, for example, spending too much time on product and tech, we've lost about 3 months, and 3 months is
Crucial sometimes.
massive in startup world, right? And we've lost about 3 months, and I will never do that again. And I think because of that lesson that I've learned, it would apply. You just get better at it, I think.
For the young listener listening into this and just about to launch their business, what advice would you give them? Or how many advices would you give them? Also a good question.
I think if you have the entrepreneurship in your bone, just start. I mean, there is no such thing as failing. I mean, we fail every day, and the only way you fail is you don't get back up and try again. Right. So if you have an inkling of an idea, go out, speak to clients, go even get an internship to learn how other people to speak to clients. One thing that I've also learned in my previous company is problem solve for clients, because it's very hard to sell something if you're not solving a client's problem, and just have the guts and just start, even as a side hustle.
Interesting. When it comes to uncertainty, because obviously there's always going to be tons of uncertainty, how do you personally manage all that uncertainty? Because we kind of never know what's going to happen tomorrow. We have a lot of wishes, like we wish that would happen, but in the end, it's anyone's guess if it's going to happen or not. So, how do you deal with that?
Yeah, for me personally, I always have a plan A, plan B, plan C. Plan A is this is what we want to get to. And if we can't get to that by XYZ, then plan B looks like this. And so you have contingencies, and you have different avenues to explore if one doesn't work. And that helps me, number one, like plan with my team. If this doesn't work, we'll go with that. Also, I don't have a dead end, because I know, okay, if this is a no-go, or if my thesis or if my thinking is incorrect, then I know to explore that. So, yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, so like I said, sometimes I will go out for a walk and take my notebook, and it's just brainstorming all of this kind of stuff in a notebook, and just clear your head. And yeah.
Feels like you guys are in the right track, right track and path, if that makes sense. Both of these things. And if people want to reach out to you, what's the best way of doing so?
Yep. So you can reach out to me on LinkedIn. It's Siara, ANNIESIARA, or my email address, Annie, ANNIE, at ONEWAYX.com.
Now, before we go, and we already have your details here, let's swap the format a little bit, which is what's the last book you read or the most impactful book you read in the last 12 months?
I knew you were going to ask this question because I've listened to your podcast. So I've been reading a lot of marketing books, and the last 12 months, I can't choose one book, but I love the Peter Thiel book from Netflix. I thought that was a really good book for any entrepreneurs and any startups. But right now I'm reading All Blacks, The Legacy.
Interesting. That is a book I would not imagine that would, how should I put this, that you pick up, if that makes sense, unless you're very much a rugby fan.
I am a rugby fan, and All Blacks is one of my favourite team. I am a bit trader here and not go for the Australians, but I do love the Hackers. But this book is actually teaching about business, the consistency, the persistent, treating your team, or treating your how to lead, treating your team fairly, how to become a leader, and so on. So this is a really good book.
Like, and did you learn the hackers already, or oh, not yet?
Yeah, I'll demonstrate it to you next time we meet in person. I don't think my haka move will translate through a podcast.
Be surprised. It'll make a great clip for social media, though. I
Yeah,
think you'd be the first guest doing a haka, so you never know on these things.
I know, right?
Although then all of your fellow Australians might be slightly upset.
I know, I can't. Please cut that out.
But yeah, it's interesting. All right, Annie, we have all the information from your startup and also your journey. It's been an absolute pleasure talking with you today. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much for having me.